before. Even if I have met you before, I bet I'm even more happy. Thank you for coming today. You know, the library does this series every Thursday at noon, and we do this to promote exchange of ideas on all kinds of topics. We see that as part of the regular business we do as a library. We put books on the shelves on all different points of view and all different subject perspectives. And we have all kinds of resources here for you through the library website, a multiplicity of perspectives. And the same thing goes with our lecture series. So we have a lecture series, or rather conversation series, called Conversations on Social Issues every Thursday. And I invite you to attend more of them in the future. Next week, Dowdy Abe, one of our humanities faculty, is going to be talking about the discipline gap in Seattle Public Schools. Did you know that 50 African American students have a 50% more higher rate of getting disciplinary action in the schools than white students? Did you know that? Well, he's going to talk about that next week, so if you're interested in that, come. And this week I'd like to welcome Katie Stoltz, Emilio Garza, and Abigail Doerr, who are here from Washington Bus, Youth Powered Democracy. So please give them a warm welcome. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Abigail, and this is Katie and Emilio, and we are all with the Washington Bus. And the Washington Bus is your youth-driven political organization, and our goal, mission, purpose is to get more young people involved and engaged in civic life in Washington. And we're going to talk a lot about that today, about who we are, what we do, and kind of what the state of democracy is for young people. But just to give you an overview of the bus is we believe in 4 things. We believe in people, young people, like you all, working together. Second thing is participation, working together to engage and be involved in lots of work and the environment, and working collectively through voting, civic participation. Third P is policy, which means we believe in creating laws and making structures that support and engage young people. And then the last, final P, arguably the most important, is party. Not political party, but the fun party, the party where we do friends with like adult or non-adult beverages and delicious snacks and whatnot. So yeah, that's kind of what the bus is all about. But we're gonna start with a little exercise that Amelia
Awesome.
lead us on.
So, actually, if you guys could all stand up for a brief moment. Most of you will have to be sitting back down very, very soon. For everybody standing, if you have a birthday that is from January to June, please sit down. Should be about half of you guys. Yeah, perfect. And for the rest of you standing, if you have a birthday on an odd day, please take a seat as well. So we've got 3 winners today. Woo!
So that was the group that sat down. That was about a quarter of the group, right?
Yeah, that was about a quarter of the group.
Cool.
So that's about a quarter of the group. We have 3 winners here. So let's get our winners some
Woo!
stickers.
Come on up.
All right, winners!
Woo!
You're a winner. Come on up. And winners have to stay up here. I'm sorry. Just for a moment. You can. That's part of winning. Is there's all these other dilemmas that come with it.
Perks.
There's perks of winning.
All right.
Come on up.
Anybody have an idea of what that last exercise represents? What do you think we represent in this room right now? So the first group that sat down was about half the class.
Wait, what are we as a room collectively though?
What was it?
Of what?
Population. I just said a group of people.
Yeah, you're close.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's right on track. Anybody else want to take a stab at it?
Where?
I'm gonna guess that it's like the percent of young people in this room who vote or something like that.
You are pretty close. Maybe a little too specific, actually. That was
We have
very
the same
good.
interests.
Where are we?
In Seattle Center, we're at Seattle Center.
But it's bigger than that. Where else are we? What?
Washington State.
It's just a little bit bigger than that.
America?
America!
Woo! America in its roots. So it was an amazing feat of physics, but somehow we crammed all 300 plus million of us into this tiny room. Yay, round of applause for us. So if we are America in this room, what do you think makes the first group of people, about half the class, the first group, what do you think that makes them?
Majority,
Majority? That's about half, but it's close. It's on the right path.
you're talking metaphorically.
Sort of. Yes. Very metaphor. It's a big metaphor. This exercise is a big metaphor. So you were kind of on the right path. You want to take another stab at it? What do you think that first group of people is? That first half?
No. Is it like an age divide?
No, not age divide. So the first.
No, I was gonna say maybe I was kind of thinking since we're in America, it's big, and we're talking about voting, how about the policymakers or something like that? The government.
That's
or
close.
something.
I like the way you're thinking. It's positive things right now. So the first half of people that sat down are people who are either ineligible or not registered to vote. So that's about half of the country, roughly. So if that is the first group of people, the second group of people, that next quarter, the half of the last half,
That includes children?
does that include children?
Mhm.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So the next quarter group that sat down, the people with the odd birthdays, what do you think they represent? If the first half of people are people who are either ineligible or not registered to vote.
People who are registered but don't vote.
Perfect answer. Ooh, that was an absolute perfect
Yes,
answer.
I know.
That deserves a
Thank
sticker.
you so much.
Woo! We're gonna get you a sticker.
So it's
There you go.
that are registered but don't vote.
That's okay.
But they're eligible.
All right, so that's great. So if that is the second group of people, what does that make our winners up here? Our lovely, beautiful winners.
Voters.
The voters.
Exactly. Voters.
There we go.
Congratulations, you're our voters.
So that shows you, that goes to show you really how big our country is, how many people are eligible to vote, how many people simply do not participate, how many people are attempting at participating, they have the option to, they're registered to vote, they get their ballots, but for some reason don't send it in. And then actually it comes down to a little bit more than a quarter of us are the ones that are registered to vote, get our ballots, send them in on a regular basis. So, click on to the next slide.
Yep.
Awesome. That ends our exercise for now.
Thank
Oh,
you.
no, this is perfect. All right. So next, since we are the voters, we're going to do the tried and true tradition of voting on what our most important issues are. So let's just get a shout out of what some of the most important issues are that maybe you guys have heard in the series of lectures that have been put on here. So what are some things that you guys care about in your own community? Or that you've heard in the political spectrum on either the local level, state level, national level, just some issues that you think are important.
Marriage equality.
Marriage equality, perfect.
Campaign financing.
Campaign financing, very important.
Immigration.
Immigration.
Education.
Education. Let's slow down here. So we had immigration, we had campaign finance, and
Education.
Gun control.
all right.
That's good.
I think that's
Healthcare.
perfect. So for the sake of keeping everything, not having too many things to focus on, so as you may have noticed if you watched our state legislature this year, there's only a very short amount of time to get things done. And if you don't get things done, sometimes they get pushed on to the next year or they try to cram them into a special session. So what we have to do here is we're going to vote on what our most important issue is, and that'll be a topic of discussion for today. So you have two votes. Can't vote for the same issue twice, so no two hands on an issue here. But let's take a vote for what you guys think is the most important issue to talk about today. So, who thinks it's marriage equality? And everybody has to vote twice. Yeah, 1, 2, 3,
4.
4. Okay. And who thinks immigration is important? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, you've got 5 there. All right. Who thinks campaign finance is the most important thing? Remember, you have 2 votes.
Oh, you do, can you make immigration 6?
7, immigration.
Yeah, remember, you have 2 votes. So you get to choose 2 things.
Can we change our mind?
Can't go back.
Can't go back.
Once you mail that ballot
The
in.
ballots have been cast. Okay.
They're all important.
Is that camp or capital?
It's
That's
campaign
campaign.
finance.
Oh,
Campaign.
camp.
So who thinks campaign finance is our most important issue? 1, 2, 3. Let's get some hands up. We're all waiting for some good ones, I guess. All right. Education. Oh.
Whoa.
There we go.
I got some hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18.
Would you believe we're in a school?
That is hard to believe. That is very hard to believe. All right, let's go with gun control. Who thinks gun control is the best? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sorry, I don't know how to count.
But you counted me twice, but that's fine.
Okay. So you'll be 6 then. Healthcare. Very last one. Last opportunity. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes. We got 10 on healthcare. So.
But all those other things could be taken care of if we had campaign finance reform.
We're trying looking for loopholes here. I like it. Very political. So, based on our voting, which issue won today?
Education.
Education. It does look like education, doesn't it? But can anybody tell us what our actual winner is?
Oh, I still
Abigail.
Abigail just told you. So our actual winner is healthcare, but who can tell us why?
Oh. What are that those little numbers on the side?
Oh, were you counting the actual voters?
Because.
What was that?
You counted the people that were voters?
We counted the winners of our last exercise as actual voters.
Yikes.
So while everybody in the room agreed that education was the most important issue that we should talk about, our elected officials only heard the people who vote.
And that was the people who were represented.
Exactly.
Is that what that little number stands
Exactly.
for? Yay!
So it goes to show you that while we all as a nation might agree on what some of the most important issues are, one aspect is gun control, right? Think about it like that. What was it, the poll they were saying 90% of Americans support background checks. But did anything happen with that?
Nope, you got filibuster.
Exactly. So that's an example of this exercise. It goes to show you that elected officials only listen to people who cast their ballots, and elected officials. So it's the most important thing, the least political thing you do all year should be voting, but voting is the best way to get your voice heard with our elected officials, with local officials, and things
Or
like that.
actually voting and electing people to them.
Actually voting and electing. Perfect. So,
Cool. So with that, with this talk of sort of legislators and whatnot, what do you guys think of when you think of politics? When you traditionally think of politics, what is it? What image comes to mind when you think of politics?
Chess.
What?
Let's see, chess.
Chess.
chance.
All right.
Chess.
What else? What other like images? Like who's involved in politics? Who do you see when you think of politics?
White guys. Like,
Well,
people.
how is it? Is that what you see? Is that what you sort of imagine? Exactly. Bored. What do they look? They're bored. They're like sort of angry. And yes, they're all just white males.
They're
Paul
like-
Ryan looks curious.
What?
Some Paul Ryan looks
They
curious.
got some nice ties on.
Nice ties. They're dressed very well. And the other thing is they're in suits. That's another interesting thing. So when the bus thinks of politics, that's not what we think of. We think of this. Okay. So we think of this. This is a picture, this is us at a music festival during the summer in what we call a vote bot, which is a cardboard robot we make, and it goes around and registers voters. Jump roping and a crowd of young people getting engaged, talking about the issues that we care about. So specifically, with that idea, why don't you think that young people get engaged in politics? What do you think barriers are for getting engaged?
General apathy.
General apathy?
I think it's the tool to connect with.
So the tool, like actually connecting, the ways to actually get engaged.
Accessibility.
Accessibility. So exactly, you touched right directly on it. So we at the Bus believe that it's not actually apathy, it's access. And a component of that, if you want to go to the next one. Well, this is another picture of what we see when we do politics. Is that we're not invited. So one of the key barriers that we talk about when we talk about what the Bus works to address is our political culture. We have a transactional political culture in the United States. The common thing is most people usually see presidential election years as main election years, and then they think of sort of off-year elections as just, not as important. So that during presidential election years, you get all of this information, you're flooded with campaign information, you're flooded with all this stuff, and then so the year after that, it's like, it is completely forgotten. An example of this is, and this is the sort of metaphor that we give, is like essentially someone throwing a huge party. So you have all these campaigns throwing this huge party, and then just specifically not inviting 18 to 25-year-olds, like specifically just not sending the invitations out to all these young people. And then the day the party shows up, election day shows up, and the day after, and they're like, well, why didn't all the young people show up? You're like, what happened? Well, they didn't invite us. Can you raise your hand if you received a campaign mailer in your mailbox in an off-year election, not just last year? If you've ever received it for like a local elected official or like so you've received one? So have you guys received one? So not very many of us though. So the majority of us have not received them. Whereas like if you use an example, people who have been longtime voters and voted for many, many years are the people that campaigns will send mailers to, but they won't send them to normal young people. So we have this very transactional political culture. Do you have questions?
Yeah, does everybody not get a ballot sent to them? Like I always get ballots in the mail. I think my younger, housemates who are, 18 to 25.
Yeah, so you only get it if you're
get
registered.
ballots.
So that's the other problem, is you have to be registered. The other key thing about that is that you have to, and we'll talk about this next, is that you have to be registered at the current address that you live. So say you move and you forget to change your address, then you won't get your ballot.
And young people move at a lot higher rate than most people.
And so that's so the biggest thing is that we're not invited. So you're not invited. So the key thing is our transactional political culture, and the Bus works to address this by being here year round. We're a political organization, but we don't go away once the presidential election year is over. We work year round on making sure that people are engaged every single year, every single day.
Next slide, please. Alrighty. So continuing on some of our troubles here, what do you think this Gandalf guy represents? You shall not pass. We had somebody say it earlier. What was
Accessibility.
accessibility? Exactly. So a big barrier, barriers to access is a huge reason why we do what we do at the Bus. And so, what do you think some of those barriers to access are? We kind of touched on them, transactional nature of politics, things like that. But what are some other barriers to access for young folks participating in political things? Any ideas?
Maybe they don't have the knowledge to vote in an informed way. They haven't done the work.
Well, exactly. If you're not getting invited, right, you're not going to have as much information. You're not going to feel as engaged. You're not going to really feel all that enthusiastic about voting. Any other ideas?
Transportation.
Transportation is that's a good thing. We're mobile. It's hard to get places. The good thing though is Washington is all vote by mail, but that can be a barrier to access as well.
You have a mailbox.
You have a mailbox. Exactly. So
To put a stamp on your mailbox.
gotta put a stamp on it. Right. So that costs money. Stamps cost money. They're cheap, but they still cost money. So you still have to pay something to vote. So, or you can drop them off at the ballot drop box. So, what are some things that we're doing to address this? There's really two things. The first one is policy. So, like one of our 4 Ps is policy, and we're working with the legislature. This year we've been advocating for increased voter access bills. So having drop boxes on college campuses across the state is one way to increase access. We're also working on a pre-registration law, so for 16 and 17-year-olds, when they go and get their license for the first time, they can have all of their information entered into the system. And by the time they turn 18, they'll get their first ballot automatically. And being in the system, and we always say voting is a habit, and so being in the system and having that ballot come to you automatically is a way to instill those habits at a very early age, at the earliest age possible. We're also working on things like the Washington Voter Rights Act, which mirrors the federal law, which, for example, in Yakima, or what's the county that Yakima's in? Yakima County, wow, spacing out here. Sorry about that, guys. So Yakima County is 49.7% Latino-based population. How many of their elected officials do you think are Latino in the entire county? What percentage do you think? There's one that you know. You're close. So it's actually only 3 out of what, 100 and...
About 180 public offices in County of Yakima.
Yeah, so out of 180 offices, there's 3 total elected officials, even though they account for 49% of the population. So what the Washington Voter Rights Act does is it looks at systems like that, where you have what we have in America is called first past the post voting systems, where the majority, as long as you have 50% plus 1 vote, you're going to win the election. And so where you have even large sections of the population that, even if they're just under 50%, they're going to lose every election systematically. So the Washington Voter Rights Act allows for those populations to challenge these kind of election systems and have a cheaper and faster way to move towards more district-based elections. Other ways that we're doing this is, of course, meeting people where they are. So, like we said, voting is a habit, and so we get out in the community, we get out and go to events all over the state. We hop in our bus, we load it up, we go knock on doors and things like that, and we just meet people where they are and make sure that they know what's going on for the upcoming elections, whether it be the local primary or the general election in the fall, issue-based elections like marriage equality, things like that. We want people to know what's going on, and we want to make sure that they're getting the information in a way that makes sense for them.
All right, the third, so we talked about political culture, barriers to access, and the third thing is, he's so cute, is opportunity gaps. So the first image we looked at, one of the first, was a bunch of old white guys sitting with ties, looking surly. So there's not a whole lot of diversity of young people, people of color, engaging and serving in public office, serving in leadership positions around our state, in our country. And that's a big problem. And so what we've defined as this problem is it's an opportunity gap. There's not a lot of opportunities for young people to gain hard and actual leadership skills, to have the experience to serve in these positions, to have the knowledge, the resources, the relationships, the networks to be able to run for political office, or whatever other leadership opportunities that help make our society and our communities a great place. So we've solved this problem. It's done. It's no longer a problem through through leadership development programs. So we started. The Washington Bus is only 5 years old, and or 6 years old. And 5 years ago, we started a program called the Washington Bus Fellowship. And this fellowship is designed to give young people an opportunity to gain really hard, useful experiences and resources to be able to run campaigns, know what it's like to run for office, and give young people the confidence and the opportunities to later serve. We also have internship programs where we've had I don't know how many interns we've had forever, but internship programs that it's a little bit less of a time commitment for folks to come in and engage in our work. Katie over here runs our campus program. She works with college students all around the state to give them resources, tools, and training materials on how to run campaigns. So step by step, we're closing this opportunity gap that's preventing young people and people of color from equally participating in leadership positions. We also have I think it's coming, we'll talk about it later too, so I'm like spoiling all the fun about what kind of stuff we have going on. We have a program called Democracy Camp, and it's a one-day political training for young people. You have to be under 35 years old to participate in this program. Somebody emailed me today. I think this is so funny. We're doing outreach for it. Somebody emailed me today and was like, "Why is this just for young people? This is a useful training that anyone can use." I was like, "True, but it's just for 35 and under."
We're trying to solve the opportunity gap.
Yeah, we're trying to solve the
We're just trying to
opportunity
do it.
gap, people. That's why. So yeah, it's a one-day training to give folks those skills of how to put on a campaign, how to create and craft great and articulate and messaging that people will want to follow, and how to have a really fun time while executing and becoming the next kid president.
The background of how so we're going to go into a little bit about the theory of how we do our work, and this will sort of be a component of,
Oh, is this me?
Yeah. So
All right, so the way in which we envision creating social change in both getting young people involved in politics and also passing policies and issues that we care about, and Katie's going to talk about like specifically how you all can do that on the issue of education. But this is called the Wellstone Triangle, and the triangle exists, and this is how we believe we can create public policy, is through grassroots organizing. So activism and community building and building messaging around an issue and building a community of people that support and advocate for issues that you care about. So that's one corner. The second corner is electoral politics. So both running for office and voting and electing people to run for office. That's another corner of it. Building relationships, and these combine in a really great way. As an advocate, you can support folks running for office. You can hold elected officials accountable. You can work with elected officials like how we did to create bills and legislation that's representative of all of us. And together that can create public policy. And then in the midst of it all, through this opportunity gap, it's absolutely crucial to create new leaders and to have leadership development opportunities and have programs that support young people so that this isn't all for nothing. So when folks are moving on to the next thing that may not be public policy making, we do have leaders and people who are taking the reins and carrying these systems forward.
So they look like
unicorns. This is how magic happens.
Yeah. And we have a theory behind politicians seeing young people as unicorns. That we're mythical creatures. Yeah. So the next piece is we're going to actually talk about how an activity that we use in all of our work, and actually specifically how you can actually get engaged with advocacy work and actually solving the bigger issues that that we care about. So we're going to focus on particularly the issue that we discussed today, that was essentially the most important issue besides sort of just the activity, which was education. We're going to walk through sort of an activity. We call this the theory of change, but really it's just a simple way of sort of breaking down how you can get engaged. So the first one is we're going to talk about our vision. So our bigger goal is we want to focus on education. We want a better education system. But let's break that down and actually talk about what do you guys actually want or want to see in your education system. You said that was the most important issue to this room. So let's start calling out key things that you would envision in an ideal situation. Yeah, that'd be great. So you start calling them out. What would you like to see in your education system?
Increase salaries for instructors.
Exactly, increase salary for instructors.
More financing for the arts.
So what was that?
More financing for the arts.
More financing for the arts, exactly.
Cheaper
With that, like
tuition.
diversity programs as well. Yeah. So, what was that?
Cheaper tuition.
Cheaper
Or just
tuition.
free tuition.
So maybe affordable tuition.
How about that?
Affordable tuition. Cool. Yeah. What other specifics
Did I
that we
miss
want to
one?
see? There was one.
Diversity program.
What was that?
That summer school for grade
grade school students that only have a second language.
Yeah. So, I mean, even focusing on, so would that be diversity of programs for K through 12? For like summer school?
Well, my son's born in America, he doesn't need a second language, so he doesn't qualify for summer school. even though
Oh, I
he's-
see. So, access to programs. So access to summer school programs. Any others? What about thinking about like technology? So having like modernized technology as we're sort of, is that something that would be
That's
interesting?
not a problem here, as you can see.
Okay, so that's not a
We're
problem.
joking.
Just kidding.
Okay.
Yeah, such as like electrical outlets everywhere in the
Yeah.
library.
What are some other things you guys would make your education better? I mean, let's think specifically about Seattle Central here. Let's think locally.
Jim?
Decrease standardization.
Decrease standardization. Any other key things that you would be a good resource to have? Books, so affordable textbooks,
Diverse course offerings.
diverse course offerings. Yeah. Maybe there's anything, I mean, key issues that you heard about in sort of the education policy, things like that in the last. Yeah. Is anyone working on a key issue around education right now? Or-
I would say like more and better access to advising.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's great. Cool. So this is a great list. So this is essentially, and this is, again, this is an activity that you can use in any type of campaign or any type of work that you want to do. If you have a key issue, to think about sort of what that bigger vision is that you want, and then this essentially step-by-step process will see you how you can get there. So the next piece of this is resources. So, and also, there's a couple questions that go with this, is starting to think about what resources do you have in the community and sort of as a student that can impact and get you all of these things. So one question that we ask, just go for it.
Free and open access to information through your library.
Yes, free and open access to information through your library. That is a great point. Your library is a resource. Oh, that's a resource.
We already
Is
have
it?
that.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
another thing is, who are the decision makers on all of these things that you see in the vision category? Who essentially makes the decisions on whether or not you get greater instructor salaries, affordable tuition, greater mentor and advising? Who are some decision makers that you know in your community that you can talk to?
School boards.
The school board, yes. And I think there's, in particular, for
State legislature.
there's a state legislature, there's particularly the Community and Technical Colleges Board. I think there's a statewide board. So the key thing is finding out who those people are on that essentially decision-making board for making those decisions. I think the only reason I just did this activity with Bellevue College, so I think it's similar to the Community Technical Board. So does anyone know who the state legislators are for this district, for Seattle Central? Yeah.
Ed Murray.
Yeah, there we go. You have me going now. So the key thing is to note who those legislators are. The one thing that they always say, like anytime you go, we go to Olympia, as a student, is they say we don't hear from students. They say we don't hear from students, we don't hear from parents. So when we're making decisions on the budget, we're going to make decisions based on who comes and knocks on our door and who comes and talks to us in our office. And the great thing is that your state legislators, if any one of you were to go down to, or during the session, and you were a student saying that you wanted to meet with Ed Murray, I guarantee you he would stop and meet with you. We were there a few weeks ago, and he made it possible to meet with us, even though he was very busy. So it means a lot to take that extra step. What else, who else are sort of resources you have on campus? What about your student-elected government, your student government?
They're not elected.
Or your appointed government, your student government? What about them? Yeah? Pedro, right? So your student government. So usually your student government is the voice to administrators. So there's sort of the middle ground between that. So if you have a key issue that you want to solve on campus, talk to your student government. What about
College president.
the college president? So administrators. What are key administrators?
Do you have any?
I just said unelected student leadership.
Mm-hmm.
What about
Students will have to decide if they trust them.
do you have a newspaper or like newsletters?
No, there's no newspaper.
There's no newspapers? What about newspapers in the community outside of St. Nelson?
There's a light reading journal of the circuit.
Oh.
The newspaper was shut down about 5 years ago.
What newspapers do you guys read locally in Seattle?
Stranger.
What? The Seattle Times?
Stranger, that's a good one.
Do you guys read The Stranger?
Yeah,
The
online.
Slog? The Slog? Do you read that?
Online.
So the online Slog, so local newspapers?
I remember the last time I bought a paper.
What?
I remember the last time I
Yeah,
read a
I actually
newspaper.
don't know what you think. Yeah, Capitol News. Great.
Student clubs.
Mm-hmm. So you guys have access to student clubs that to do organizing work?
Yeah.
That's a great point.
They need more funding. So they can do more.
So that could be your vision, and then student clubs could be your resource. So that's the other thing is thinking about sort of, in terms of, creating campaign or creating sort of, the change is really being strategic about who to talk to and what their role is essentially to get you where you want to go. And you'll find that what's interesting is when you really look closely, there's a lot of people that are very, very accessible to you if you just seek them out. So the last one is where you all come in and where we all come in. It's the action part. It's the activities section of this. So it's the you. So specifically, we're going to brainstorm what we can actually do to influence that middle box that will eventually get us to the far box. So what are some key activities that you can do or ways in which you can contact them?
Write a letter, send an email.
Exactly. Write a letter, send an email. And there's websites and stuff. If you go to the library online website, it can help you find out where to go, talk to a legislator, things like that. And what other ones? Go meet with them. Exactly. Go down, travel to Olympia. If you can make it down there, meet with them. The other cool thing is they also have local offices. So when they're not down in Olympia, your representatives have local offices here in the district that you can go to. What are some other ones?
Put on a robot suit and jump rope.
Yes, exactly. You can put on you can do that, just engage your peers, but come up with creative advocacy tools. Another one with that is you can register fellow students to vote. The more that you sort of increase the student block of voting from around this area, when you go to Olympia, you can say, look how many students we have registered in this district. If you don't support education, we won't elect you again. So voting power. Yeah, what other ones? What are some other advocacy tools that you've seen happen before?
How do you think?
Stage a protest.
Protests. So protests and rallies? Exactly.
You can also just use social networks too to remind people to vote or to register to vote.
Education. Educate your peers.
And so social media, things like that. What would you do to say influence the community technical college state board? So I'm pretty sure every community college campus, I don't know if this is true, has a student representative on that board. So you find out who that student is and make sure that they're advocating for students. So write them a letter, meet with them. What? I don't know who it is, but I'm pretty sure that was passed into law. Any other key things?
I was thinking maybe we should incentivize, is that a word?
That's totally, I've used that word before, so even if it's not, we'll use it. Yeah, you can incentivize. So use incentives for getting people engaged. So one thing that
extra credits or something.
Yeah. One is if you have a key legislator or a key professor. So professor, and I actually didn't realize professors were on here. They also professors have a union that they work with that does a lot of advocacy work down in Olympia, AFT Washington. But things like actually getting in touch with your professors to say, hey, could you give extra credit to our class for all of us going to Olympia for the lobby day or something like that. Yeah. And I think, so one sort of, I guess the takeaway sort of from this activity is to really see that you can actually make an impact with individual actions on these bigger mission and bigger vision. And knowing that even if they seem very far off, these goals seem very, very far away, you do have the ability to impact them. And this is something that the bus does all the time with our work, is breaking down politics in a way that we can actually interact with it and engage with it. So I guess the next piece of this, we're going to talk about actually voter registration, but the last thing I'll add is one of the sort of best ways to sort of think about the action and activities is think beyond that of like, in terms of you were mentioning like having a vote bot, jump roping, is thinking about events and things that are really, really cool, like parties, you know, even events like this, like having like a lunchtime, you know, conversation on social issues, and bringing you essentially take what's really cool and fun and sexy and awesome and exciting, and you bring politics there. Because really all people need is the access. So that's a lot of what the bus philosophy is.
You can address issues at student conferences.
What?
Student conferences. There's a lot of them for schools, and a lot of students go to it. You can bring up the issue. More people might get involved.
Definitely. So student conferences, like, and you take something that's like highly effective, like your training's there, you know, you get to go somewhere, and making those more accessible. It's a great way.
So
Cool.
entire theory is meeting people where they are, finding them out, finding where they organize, where they usually get together, going to them, and making sure that people are aware of issues.
So our last piece before we
All
open
right.
it up for discussion.
This is strictly business time. All right, I know, So this here, and we talked about here, is registering to vote, registering other voters. This is a key way to make your voice heard. Simply not the only way to have your voice heard in our democracy, but there are some information you need to know. So in order to register to vote, you must be a U.S. citizen and you must be 18 by the next election. And the next election in the state of Washington is on August 6th. Actually a really big primary. We're voting for the mayor. And there's 8 candidates who have currently filed for the mayor's race, so we get to like shave it down to the top 2. It's really exciting. It's August 6th. So if you are not registered to vote, here are voter registration forms, and you can fill these out right now, and we will mail them in for you. Are you not sure if you need to register to vote? If you've recently moved apartments in Washington State, so you were saying you get your ballot every time. You voted probably in the primary or in the special election a few weeks ago. Well, a few weeks, February. So, yes. If you've recently moved to Washington State from out of state and you will live here for at least 30 days, you can also register to vote. And if you're just not sure if you're registered to vote, it's always good just to update your registration. So if anyone needs to register to vote, I have these forms for you.
Who's
Yes.
registered to vote at their current address?
Woo! At the
None
current
of you have
address?
moved. You've all received your ballot every election. All right. If you need one of these forms, we have them right here, and we can fill them out. And we can collect them for you. Awesome.
Cool. And then so the next piece, which is the other form that all of you guys should have in front of you. Raise your hand if you don't have one of these. Does everyone have one of these? Okay. There you go. I think you fill one of these pages. Everyone have one?
It's probably better to use a pen.
Go on. Okay. All right. Does anyone have one? Okay. So the next piece is is just getting engaged with the process and also getting engaged with the bus. So we specifically have multiple ways that you can get engaged. Essentially, I guess the first and foremost is we have an internship program. We specifically have a campus internship program. So if you're looking at wanting to do work on campus and actually start the voter registration drive or sort of do civic work here on campus, we provide training and resources to actually allow you or to sort of equip you with the ability to do that. So if you want to fill that card out, we'll make sure that we contact you specifically about that program. If there's a way to actually get course credit on campus, I don't know if Seattle Central has that opportunity, but usually you can get a professor to sign on. You can do work with your organization and then get course credit for that work that you do, and we can oversee it. The next one is volunteer. So we have events all summer long. We have events all year round to specifically get engaged and volunteer. So one example of a really exciting event that we have that matches with sort of all of this is we host the largest candidate forum in Washington State for the Seattle mayor race, and that's going to be July 16th. It's a Tuesday night at Showbox Market. We're going to have all of the mayoral candidates. We have them on stage. We make them jump through hoops. Literally, we're going to have them jump through hoops. and compete against each other for the audience. So the audience will be able to text to vote who they think actually wins. And then we'll essentially, and it basically allows the audience to actually hear their issues, and they have to actually talk to young people in a way that we understand their issues and where they stand. So it'll be a lot of fun. So we'll also invite you guys all to that on Tuesday, July 16th, as well as we have multiple other opportunities. Almost every weekend we're at different events throughout Seattle, doing voter registration, engaging with people year round. And then the last one is Democracy Camp. If anything that you saw here today sparked some interest or you got excited about it, we'll be running a day-long sort of expanded version of this with some key trainings on specifically how you can take an issue or specifically any one of these things and actually start a campaign. And we'll provide support post that day on how you can actually do that. So I guess right now we will end there, and in the last sort of few minutes that we have, we'll open it up for discussion and any questions that you guys have. And thank you so much for having us as well. So are there any questions or discussion or takeaways that you guys?
Questions about us, questions about the bus, questions about politics in general, local, state, city.
We also have lots of facts.
I'm also curious, what is something that surprised any of you about the information you learned today? Is there anything you learned that surprised you?
I was wondering why the system, if the system recognizes that the voting is equal to the population, why do they still maintain it? Can't they just open the decision to anyone who resides in the place? Does that make sense?
It's a great question.
That's a really, really good question. I don't necessarily think people are satisfied with the way that the election systems work, and I think that, last year, the last general election, people waited in lines in other states for about 8 hours in some places. So a lot of states and a lot of communities are looking at ways that we can fix a lot of these barriers to accessing voting, but a lot of it is pretty political as well. It's for some elected officials, it's in their best interest if less people do vote.
So do you think it's better to champion a system that's kind of inclusive?
Yeah.
Rather than championing one that's kind of
I think it's tricky though. I think that's a really good question, is we don't necessarily know what the best way is to get a lot of people voting and a lot of people participating. And I think this is something that is going to be a lifelong project of the bus, is trying to figure out how we can work with elected officials to make great and accessible systems. But vote by mail, Washington and Oregon are the only states that use vote by mail, and they're like, this is awesome, this is great. And some other advocates are like, well, vote by mail is really hard for young people, for homeless populations, for more transient, lower income populations. And then there's also other dilemmas of like the Postal Service is, the U.S. Postal Service and how we end up voting and how all of our ballots get from one place to another it's also federally overseen, and it's not necessarily going to be around forever. So those are a lot of questions that mail is an archaic way of communicating. So there's a lot of questions in how we can have secure, but also accessible election systems.
I think this is really nice, especially for the population, because even for myself, I'm over the age now, but just I am a recent, I'm proud to be a voter, and I had to learn how to vote. Reading the forms and everything, it can be quite overwhelming if you don't know what to do. And I think I went to this new, they came to SBI, and we got to go to Olympia and meet, and they did a first training. I got a certificate, but I haven't went through the rest of the training yet. I have to contact them. But what I wanted to say is I was looking at a program on television, and they were talking about, like you said,